Have you ever felt it? The frantic and ultimately futile scramble to be understood. You have made a decision, you have stated a boundary, you have expressed a truth that is your own, and you are immediately met with a wall of incomprehension, of judgment, of disapproval. In that moment, a powerful and almost irresistible instinct rises up within you. It is the instinct to explain. You feel a desperate, anxious, and deeply supplicating urge to build a bridge of words, to justify your position, to present your evidence, to convince the other person of the validity and the righteousness of your own inner world. You become your own defense attorney, passionately and exhaustively pleading your case before the high court of the other person's opinion. You have been taught that this is a virtuous and necessary act. You believe that good communication is the key to all healthy relationships, that to be understood is the highest possible human prize. You have spent your life in the exhausting and endless project of trying to make the labyrinthine complexity of your own soul legible to the outside world, believing that if you can just find the right words, the perfect explanation, you will finally be granted the love, the respect, and the acceptance you so desperately crave. But what if this entire project is a catastrophic mistake? What if your desperate need to be understood is not a sign of your emotional intelligence, but a symptom of a profound and devastating psychological wound? What if your constant explaining is not an act of connection, but an act of profound and tragic self-abandonment? This is the radical, terrifying, and ultimately world-changing insight that lies at the heart of the psychology of Carl Jung. For Jung, the path to a life of genuine power, of authentic purpose, and of deep, unshakable self-respect begins with a single, courageous, and almost impossibly difficult act, the act of withdrawing your own soul from the courtroom of other people as judgment. It is the act of strategically and unapologetically stopping forever the project of explaining yourself. When you do this, Jung understood you do not just change the dynamic of a conversation, you change your soul, you change the very fabric of your reality. The primal wound, the crime of being misunderstood. To understand the transformative power of not explaining, you must first diagnose the deep, hidden sickness of our compulsive need to be understood. This is not a communication problem, it is a soul problem. It is a wound that goes back to the very origins of our identity. From a Jungian perspective, the person who is addicted to explaining is a person who has never been given the sacred and non-negotiable gift of unconditional validation. As a child, they learned a devastating and life-defining lesson. Their own, authentic, inner reality was not in and of itself valid. It was subject to the review, the judgment, and the approval of the powerful adults around them. Their feelings were wrong, their perceptions were crazy, their desires were selfish. They were a book that was constantly being redlined by a critical and unforgiving editor. To survive in this environment, the child learns that their inner world is not a safe and sovereign territory. It is a piece of contested ground that must be constantly and anxiously defended. They learn that their survival depends on their ability to be a brilliant and persuasive lawyer for their own soul. They must learn to justify their feelings, to rationalize their needs, to build an airtight, logical case for their own existence. Their words are not a tool for self-expression. They are a weapon, a shield, a desperate and exhausting tool of negotiation. This is the birth of the eternal defendant. As an adult, this person is trapped in a perpetual and exhausting courtroom drama. Every interaction is a potential cross-examination. Every disagreement is a trial. Their entire life becomes a frantic and ultimately futile attempt to finally win the case that they lost as a child, the case for their own unconditional right to be who they are. Your compulsive need to explain yourself is a trauma response. It is a reenactment of this primal wound. Every time you over-explain a no, every time you justify a feeling, every time you enter into a long and exhausting debate to defend a personal choice, you are not being a good communicator. You are being that terrified child standing before the cold and judging eyes of the parent, desperately trying to prove that you have a right to exist. You are unconsciously telling the world, please understand me so that I can feel that I am real. Please validate me so that I can feel that I am worthy. This is not an act of strength. It is an act of profound and desperate fear. It is a form of slavery disguised as a virtue. The tyranny of the logos, the prison of the rational mind. This internal pre-existing wound is then ruthlessly exploited by the very nature of our modern Western culture. We are a civilization that has deified the logos, the word, the rational, the explainable. We have been taught that the only things that are real are the things that can be clearly and logically articulated. If you can't say it, you don't know it. We have come to distrust the silent, the intuitive, the mysterious, the paradoxical, the very language of the soul itself. This is a profound and devastating form of psychological tyranny. The soul, as Carl Jung so brilliantly demonstrated, is not a rational entity. It is a vast, ancient, and often chaotic wilderness of symbols, of archetypes, of non-linear and often contradictory truths. To demand that the soul explain itself in the clear, simple, and logical language of the ego is like asking the ocean to explain itself in the language of a puddle. It is an act of profound and violent reductionism. The person who is addicted to explaining is a person who has deeply internalized this tyranny. They have become the colonizing agent of the rational mind in the wild and sacred territory of their own soul. They do not trust their own feelings unless they can construct a perfect, logical explanation for them. They do not honor their own intuition unless they can back it up with a list of pros and cons. They are a stranger in their own inner world, unable to speak or to understand its native tongue. To choose to stop explaining is to commit a revolutionary and heretical act. It is to declare that your inner reality is sovereign, that it is self-validating, and that it does not require a visa from the embassy of the rational mind to be allowed to exist. It is the act of saying, I feel what I feel, I want what I want, I know what I know, and I do not owe you, or even myself, an explanation. This is not an act of irrationality. It is an act of a higher and more integrated form of reason, a reason that understands that the ego is a small and limited tool, and that the soul is a vast and mysterious master. It is the beginning of the journey of moving from being merely smart to being truly wise. The alchemical shift, the 4 great transformations of non-explanation. When you have the immense courage to begin this process, to strategically and consciously withdraw your energy from the futile project of explaining yourself, a series of profound and often terrifying transformations begin to occur. Everything changes. The first thing that will happen is that you will experience a profound and terrifying liberation. The cage door will swing open, and you will be blinded by the light of your own terrifying freedom. You will realize that you have been living your entire life in a prison of your own making, a prison whose bars were forged from the need for other people's approval. When you stop explaining, you are taking back the key. You are, for the first time, standing in the raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic truth of your own being. This is not a comfortable experience. It is a form of existential vertigo, but it is the necessary prerequisite for any true and authentic life to begin. The second transformation is that you will become a person of profound and almost terrifying power. The person who is constantly explaining is a person who is constantly giving their power away. They are, in every interaction, placing themselves in a position of supplication, of asking for permission, of seeking a verdict from an external judge. The person who has stopped explaining has, in a very real sense, become their own judge, their own jury, and their own God. They are no longer a participant in the courtroom drama. They are the sovereign who presides over it. Their silence, their simple and unadorned statements of their own reality, "This is what I am doing, this is what I need," no, are not an absence of communication. They are a new and far more powerful form of it. It is a communication that comes not from a place of a needy and anxious ego, but from the quiet, solid, and unshakable ground of the integrated self. The world, on a deep and instinctual level, recognizes this power. People may not like it, they may find it intimidating, but they will, without question, respect it. You are no longer a question mark, hoping for an answer from the world. You have become a period, a simple, solid, and undeniable statement of fact. The third transformation is the purification of your relationships. When you stop explaining yourself, the inauthentic, transactional, and codependent relationships in your life will begin to wither and die. The people who were in your life because you were a perfect and flawless mirror for their own ego, because you were a reliable and endlessly accommodating source of validation, will not be able to tolerate the new, sovereign, and often inconvenient you. Their departure will be painful, but it is not a loss, it is a liberation. And in the space that is created, a new and different kind of relationship will begin to emerge. These will be relationships that are not based on the transactional logic of the ego, but on the resonant and often silent recognition of the soul. These will be the people who do not need you to explain yourself, because on some deep and intuitive level they already understand. They are the people who can meet you in the quiet, solid, and unapologetic truth of your own being, and who are not afraid. These are your true tribe, your fellow sovereigns, and the connection you will share with them will have a depth, a reality, and a power that the old codependent relationships could never have even imagined. Finally, and most profoundly, when you stop explaining yourself, you begin for the first time to discover who you actually are. As long as you are living in the world of the explanation, you are living in the world of the story, of the persona, of the curated and edited self. You are a stranger to your own true and often paradoxical nature. But when you have the courage to be silent, to simply be with your own, unexplained, and often irrational inner reality, you begin a process of profound self-discovery. This is the heart of the Jungian project of individuation. It is the journey of becoming an individual, undivided, a whole and unique person. You discover the raw, untamed power of your own shadow. You discover the strange and beautiful wisdom of your own inner contrasexual other, your anima or animus. You discover that you are not the small, rational and well-behaved person you have always pretended to be. You are a vast, chaotic and magnificent multiplicity, a living, breathing paradox. To stop explaining is to stop trying to force this wild and beautiful multiplicity into the small, sterile and ultimately lifeless box of a coherent and rational identity. It is to surrender to the mystery of your own being. The path of the sovereign, the choice, before the modern soul. This is the secret teaching of Carl Jung that our modern, hyperverbal, and deeply insecure world has so desperately forgotten. Your life is not a thesis to be defended. It is a work of art to be lived, and the greatest art requires not more explanation, but more silence, more mystery, more of the deep and untamed power of the unsaid. The path is not an easy one. It is a path of quiet rebellion, of conscious withdrawal from the courtroom of the collective, of a lifelong commitment to the cultivation of your own inner authority. It will require you to disappoint people. It will require you to be misunderstood. It will require you to bear the profound and often terrifying loneliness of your own sovereign truth. But the prize it offers is the greatest prize a human being can attain, a life that is your own. You will no longer be a ghost, a puppet, a defendant in the endless and exhausting trial of your own existence. You will be a presence, a power, a sovereign. You will have traded the cheap and fleeting comfort of being understood for the deep, abiding, and unshakable reality of your own authentic being. And in that trade, you will discover a form of freedom, of peace, and of profound and deeply silent self-love that no amount of words could ever hope to explain. The great work of your life is not to make yourself legible to the world. It is to learn to read the sacred and often silent text of your own soul.